Awesome. Well, we want this to be interactive. As we're going through the webinar, there's a couple of places where we'll stop and pause and try to answer your questions. So feel free to let us know what questions you have in the chat, and we'll try to get back to you. This session will be recorded too, so a little bit later you'll get an email with the access to the recording if you want to go back to it. Another quick note, if you see the black border around the slides right now, you can just click the magnifying glass one time. It should zoom in it a little bit and get rid of those. But yeah, without further ado, let's jump into it. So a little bit about Rustici to start off. We're e-learning experts. We've been around since 2002. I have not been here since 2002, but coming up on 5 years here at Rustici. I think my colleague Nick here, about 3.5. But yeah, we're based in Franklin, Tennessee. And yeah, we just do everything e-learning. We try to help connect content and platforms across the e-learning ecosystem. And we're experts, especially in SCORM, XAPI, CMI5, LTI, AICC. And if you don't know what all those acronyms are, don't worry. That's our job, to make it easier for you and you don't have to get too into the weeds. We just want to make e-learning as seamless and easy to work with as possible. A little bit about us. Nick, I'll let you introduce yourself first.
Sure, thanks. Like Nolan said, we're the e-learning experts, and our mission here at Rustici Software is to make e-learning pleasant and impactful for everybody. We focus on compatibility so that learning progress is seamless. Yeah, you already mentioned that I've been here with Rustici about 3.5 years. For that entire time, I've been on the SCORM Cloud team. And like it says on the screen, I am an avid Survivor fan. So if you're a fan of CBS Survivor, you can leave your favorite Survivor moment. I would love to read that. Yeah, what about you, Nolan? You want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, hey, I'm Nolan. I do mostly support here on the SCORM Cloud team. Occasionally put up a PR, fix something, but most of the time I'm talking to customers, helping customers build integrations or work around their specific limitations. So I've seen a lot of different use cases with cloud, and I've worked with a lot of different people. A little bit about me: I'm a big fan of dad jokes, or bad jokes, some might call them, and a big gamer. If we have any gamers in the chat, I've been addicted to Arc Raiders recently. But yeah, if you ever open up a support ticket with Rustici or for SCORM Cloud, you've probably spoken to Ryan, and if you had something more technical, you probably talked to me. But I think there were some familiar faces in this that signed up for the webinar. But yeah, anyways, just to kind of summarize the things we're going to be talking about, distribution methods, and maybe distribution isn't always the right word. It certainly is. Dispatching is certainly a way to distribute content, but there's several different ways you can get your e-learning content out in front of learners with SCORM Cloud. SCORM Cloud's really broadly applicable. It's the sort of Swiss Army knife, the sampler plate of Rustici products. So there's lightweight ways to quickly get content in front of learners with invitations, super easy, as well as dispatch, which is a way to share content out. We'll dive into how that works, and all the way up to really technical, building a full API integration with SCORM Cloud, leveraging SCORM Cloud's content player to build anything from, just a simple, building a SCORM player into your platform that you already have, or if you want to build a full-scale LMS, SCORM Cloud can do it all. And we certainly have customers that do every range, or all sorts of things with SCORM Cloud. So we'll talk about some of those use cases here.
Yeah, like Nolan said, we're going from least technical to most technical. The least technical we're starting off with is public invitations. It is the easiest way to get learners access to your content. And why is it the easiest? It's because you don't have to know anything about your learners in advance. You don't need an LMS or a learning management system. Public invitation is just a single link that you can provide to your learners to provide access to your content. Some examples that we've provided here are like posting a link in your Slack channel or in your Microsoft Teams group or like on your private social media platform. And just a note, like you can create public invitations through the website, which is super easy. But if you're a little more technical and you want to do an API integration, it is available through the API too. So just to explain public invitations, I'm going to give an example. Say I just started a community weather group with my neighbors, and we talk about the weather and we teach each other about the weather. And I got so excited that I created my own course. It's about the layers of the atmosphere. I can upload it to SCORM Cloud. I can create a public invite where I'll get a link, and then I can post that link in our community group chat. And when they click on it, they'll just have to provide their name and their email address, and that'll create a registration when they click the OK button, and then they'll be redirected to my course. I am responsible for taking that link out of SCORM Cloud and putting it where I want to share it. And I just want to emphasize that you should share the links in a slightly less than public forum where you trust your audience. Because anybody can click on these, anybody can create registrations, and if they're abused, you have like 1,000 registrations you didn't expect, learners you didn't expect. You have to front the cost of those registrations. So I mean, just like I wouldn't post it to your LinkedIn or your Twitter followers, but it's great for testing content with small groups and getting feedback from stakeholders. So we'll jump into our first live demo of the day. Let me get into my SCORM Cloud account, and I'm looking at my library page, and I'm going to click on my course. And then up here in the top right-hand corner, there's a share button. I'm going to click share, and then the first option is invite. I have this modal that pops up, and public invitation is pre-selected. I'll hit create invitation. All right, so at the very top, you can see our link that I can share. And then I have some settings. The first one is this invitation currently open to new learners. I can close it so that when someone new attempts to use this link, that they won't be able to get into the content or create registration. I can disable it so that the learners who have already registered for this course are no longer able to launch the link. And then our last setting down here, if I only want the link to be valid until a certain date, I can type that date in and the link will disable itself after it hits that time. So I'm going to grab this link now, and I'm going to jump into a new tab and paste it. And this is what the learner will be met with whenever they click on their link. So I'm going to go ahead and provide my email address and say, okay, take me to my training. And when I click this button, that's when the registration is created. All right, and you can see our course here. Getting ready for a blizzard, and we can choose now which items we would want whenever we're prepping for a blizzard. You can hit the return to LMS button, and you can see that I've completed my training. I'm going to jump back into SCORM Cloud, go to my library page, and get back into my course. You can see I have a single registration created. And then you can see like my email address and my name, and that I've completed the course here. All right. Okay, Nolan, before we leave here, maybe we should check in with the audience and make sure that that makes sense.
Yeah, did anybody have any questions. Maybe we probably could show private invitations too. But if you had any questions about public invitations, feel free to drop in the chat. And yeah, let's keep it moving, and we'll circle back. Oh, how do you know when the course is complete? Well, hopefully the course should communicate somehow that you've completed it and it's safe to exit. But on the SCORM Cloud side, you will be able to see a list of your registrations, and if the course marked it as complete, you'd see that. With SCORM, we talk about the big four a lot: pass, fail, complete or incomplete, score, and total time. That's kind of the four main areas people are most concerned with tracking, and you certainly can access that and see those metrics for all of your learners inside of SCORM Cloud.
And I will say it might be confusing because I did not complete that course and it was
Oh
marked
yeah,
as completed. So that was because I built that course and it is not perfect. It's up to the course to mark it complete.
yeah. So anyways, moving on to private invitations. So what are private invitations? They're a step above public invitations. You at least know something about your learners, and that is their email address. So kind of works the same way. You're going to provide a list of emails, and private invitations are going to it's going to send everybody in your recipient list a link to access the content directly. So there's going to be no landing page where they have to enter their name and email. We already know their email, so when you create that private invitation, we're going to go ahead. SCORM Cloud's going to go ahead and create a registration for them and send them their own personal link. Oh, also, I forgot to mention, but yes, this is also available in the UI, as Nick will demonstrate in a moment, and you can automate this with the API, of course. So like I mentioned, unlike public invitations where that registration is not created until a learner gives us some information about themselves, when you create a private invitation, it's actually going to go ahead and create registrations for everybody on your recipient list. And that private invitation job is going to run in the background and fire off those emails for you. So everyone's going to get their own personal link to access their registration. And looks pretty similar, but Nick, why don't you show us how that looks different than the public invites?
Sure. We'll jump back into SCORM Cloud and we have our course page open. We'll go back to our share button, top right-hand corner, click invite again. And instead of public invitation, this time we're going to choose private. And it provides us some more options. I can choose who I want this to send from, either my email address or from SCORM Cloud itself. And then I just need to provide a comma separated list of my learners. So I'm going to pop that in here now. I have 3. And then I'm going to hit create invitation. And I'm going to send new. This is an option if you've already created a registration for somebody. So now we're going to be on our invitation screen. At the top, you can see our delivery status. There are 3 learners we're sending this to, and it will start to send emails with those links to those learners. So as it's doing that, it's creating registrations and sending emails. You can see that it's done. I'm going to go ahead and refresh this page. And I can see my 3 recipients here, and this is their unique launch link that they'll use to get into the course. I'll just show you quickly. If I copy their link and open a new tab, and I'll launch the course, this time they're not greeted with that page that they need to provide their name again because we've already done that part. They just go right into your content. All right.
Oh, looks like you did get a completion on that one.
Yeah, I think it automatically completes. That's
okay.
a flaw in my course. Yeah.
It's an easy course. Nice. Yeah, so looks like we got some questions. I'll take a moment to kind of address these. Karen asks, what reports are available for public invite courses. All of the same reporting is going to be available, and SCORM Cloud can report on anything that the course is reporting. So it's up to the course really to report that, hey, the learner passed or the learner completed this, or if there's questions and answers in the course. With regards to SCORM, if the course is recording, QA, multiple choice, or free response things as interactions, um, those would be available for you. So there's nothing special about public invite courses. Anything that the course is reporting, you'd be able to see in reports, just like any of these courses or any way that you choose to distribute it. Maria, is it possible to customize the first page? I think you mean like the public invite page where students include their emails. Unfortunately, no, it's always going to look like that, and that's just because public invites are the most lightweight way, like quick and dirty. You certainly, when we start talking about API integrations, you could certainly build a custom page that then goes and registers them and gets a link for them to launch it, and you could make that look however you want. Joe asks, does SCORM Cloud look at the lesson status? Yes, I believe so. I'm a little fuzzy on lesson status or what that is, but I think that's
Progress, perhaps?
yeah. I think the general, anything that the course is reporting, SCORM Cloud should be able to report on and look at. Joris, do you need to create the users up front? You do not need to create the users up front. If you look in SCORM Cloud, you might see that People tab, where you can add people to give them access to your SCORM Cloud account so that they can log in and see your course library and do all the things that you can do. You'll also see learners pop up in there, particularly if you're using private invitations or public invitations if they're providing their email. But basically, learners will only show up there if they've provided their email, or when you register them, you provided an email. So then they're kind of more than a learner. They're kind of a user in SCORM Cloud, and you'll see them show up there with a user role or a learner role. But you certainly do not have to go, beforehand and add your list of learners to the People tab. But you may see some learners pop up there. If not, how do you know they're? You might not. Public invitations, you probably get a first and last name. For private invitations, you probably just have their email. And you'll see when we talk about dispatch and API integrations, it's really up to you. Or in the case of dispatch, it's up to the client LMS and what it's sending across. So it's likely going to send first and last name. But when you build an API integration, that's up to you. You can just give us a learner ID. You don't have to give us any PII if you don't want to, but if that helps on the reporting side of things, you can certainly provide first and last name and email. Cami asks, when sending a private invite using email only, is there a way to ask the learner to then provide the first and last name? Unfortunately, there is not, to my knowledge. So you're just going to have the email, and their email, I think, will be their learner ID, if I'm not mistaken. But my guess is if you have a list of their emails, you have some idea of who they are already. But no, there's no form or any way for the learner to kind of put more information in if they wanted to for private invitations. Rick, if you have a login that captures the name and email address that we currently use to grant access to the course, can we integrate in yes, you absolutely can. Like I said, you can pass, and we'll talk about this more when we see like what creating a registration through the API looks like. But yeah, you can pass us the first name and last name. Let's carry on, and I think there's a couple more questions I missed, but in the interest of time, let's move on to dispatches. Nick, take it away.
Sounds good. All right. Yeah, that wraps up our invitation section. and we're going to switch our coverage and talk about dispatch. So they're different than public and private invitations, different audience. So instead of sharing your course links directly with your learners, dispatches are for sharing your courses with a learning management system. It allows you to provide your course to your clients, and then your clients are able to provide the course to their learners. SCORM Cloud will take your course in its current standard, whether that be SCORM or SAC or CMI5, and it will create a SCORM 1.2 package from that. And then you take that SCORM 1.2 package and you upload it to the client's LMS or your LMS if you're just looking for compatibility between learning standards. But yeah, that's a quick introduction to Dispatch. I'm going to pass it back to Nolan so he can give you a few more details.
Yeah, so why use dispatches? What problems do they solve? Well, the main one is centralizing control, maintaining control of your content. So when you send dispatches out to clients, if you're licensing your content, um, you can dispatch a single course to a dozen different clients. If you go back and you need to update something about the course and create a new version, you don't have to go resend new packages out to them. You're essentially giving them keys to access the latest version of that content, whatever it is at the moment. And you actually have some control over what happens to registrations that might be in progress. So if you don't want to make them restart on the latest version, you don't necessarily have to, but you can certainly ensure that everybody launching it is seeing the latest version if you realize you had some typo or you need to update your content for the new year. The other big one is you maintain access to, or you maintain access control. So you can set expiration dates, you can disable the dispatch or close it so you can prevent new learners from accessing it, but allow people who have already started to continue to complete their course, or you can just close it outright to any new launches. And you protect your intellectual property. You're not sharing the actual SCORM package, you're just sharing this kind of proxy file. So any IP that you have inside, any resources that might be contained in that SCORM package, you can rest assured that the person you've given this course to or access to this course to is not turning around and selling it to their clients and pretending like it's their course. The other big thing is you're meeting learners where they are. Nobody likes to manage a bunch of logins for 5 different e-learning portals. In all likelihood, they already have a place where they're coming and taking training, whether that's an academic portal or corporate portal for compliance training. You meet learners where they are already, and they don't need to come sign up and create a new account in your LMS, and it's a little bit easier for them. The other problem Dispatch tends to solve for a lot of people is it can act as a compatibility layer. So SCORM 1.2, as Nick mentioned, is the kind of file format of these dispatch packages that you're exporting. And SCORM 1.2 is the most ubiquitous and probably widely supported e-learning standard. So if your learners are, they're tied to an LMS that only supports SCORM 1.2, but you have content that's CMI5 or XAPI or SCORM 2004, worry not, you can create a dispatch. It'll play and act and track like a SCORM 1.2 package. Your learner's LMS will be happy. It'll allow them to import it, but when they launch it, they're actually being kind of redirected to SCORM Cloud, and they're accessing the content natively as whatever e-learning standard it was published in. And then the benefit is you get the tracking on the SCORM Cloud side with whatever detail you have for, XAPI, you'd get those, or CMI5, you'd get those XAPI statements. But the learner's LMS is going to get all the same tracking that they would expect with any kind of SCORM 1.2 package. So how do you create a dispatch? Nick was going to show us in a moment how you do this through the UI, but it's also available in the API if you want to automate it, if you want to, create 1,000 dispatches and download them all as one big package, and automate this so that anytime you bring on a new customer, you can just quickly, make an API call and get a bundle of dispatches for them. You can certainly do that through the API. And on the next slide, we just have a little bit of a visual aid to kind of show. I'm a visual learner. It's not too complicated, but just to kind of show the relationship. You may have a course that's your single source of truth. Maybe there's a bunch of different versions, but you're sharing out these proxy files that really just point back to your course in SCORM Cloud. Yeah, so Nick, want to show us what that looks like in the UI?
Yeah. Let's do another demo. So I'm going to go back to SCORM Cloud. I'm going to go to my library page. Get logged back in again. All right, this time I'm going to choose my CMI5 version of my emergency preparedness course, just to show you that there's some compatibility problems we can solve. And we'll use the familiar share button that we've used with invitations, except this time we're going to choose dispatch. And then we have our course that's already selected here at the top. And then I need to choose a destination for this dispatch. The destinations are just tags to where the course is going to be dispatched. It's going to be some indicator to you as to how the dispatch is being used. I know a lot of people name their dispatches by which client they're sending their course to. So I'm going to create a new destination, and I'm going to name it the Channel 5 viewing area, because News Channel 5 is based out of Nashville, and I'm going to send my course to the Nashville area. Hit save. My destination is selected, and I'm going to go ahead and create this dispatch. All right, so there it is. Keep in mind our course was CMI5, and now I have this dispatch, which is SCORM 1.2. I'm going to click the checkbox next to it, and I'm going to get it out of SCORM Cloud now. So I'm going to just download it, and it'll go to my downloads folder. And then I'm going to go over to an LMS. The dispatch can be used in Moodle or Canvas or Bridge or Blackboard. You name your LMS of choice. I'm going to be using Open LMS today. They were gracious enough to let us an account for our demo. So you can give them a look if you're in the market for an LMS. I'm going to go down here to the bottom and click the Browse button. And you can't see this probably, but I am picking my dispatch from my downloads folder. Clicking open, say add a SCORM package, and I'm going to upload it. All right. So I just uploaded that proxy file. It's interpreted as a SCORM package, even though it's CMI5. I'm going to go ahead and click it. And I'm going to click enter to launch it. All right. So you can see my course played. And then, there it is. I'm going to go ahead and exit. I'm going to jump back into SCORM Cloud. I'm going to go back over to the library page. And you can see that there's one registration created for this CMI5 course. And you can see down here that the LMS was the one that provided the learner ID this time around. And my learner name is here as well. And that came from the LMS. So
yeah, well, one quick thing, because the learner ID is actually, it has your destination name appended to it, so you'll be able to see. I think it's like channel 5 viewing area _ Nick.Carver. Oh yeah, you're not gonna be able to see the learner ID on this page, but yeah, we're appending the destination name and the learner ID that the LMS sends over. But yeah, you're right. The name that came over, the learner name, Nick Carver, that came over was because that's your name in OpenLMS.
yeah, thanks. And just reiterate that if I do update this course in SCORM Cloud, I don't have to download it again and upload it to my LMS. the latest version will be launched, and you don't have to do anything. No, that makes super convenient.
Awesome.
Yeah. So we're gonna leave the Cloud Dispatch storm behind. It's getting pretty
Yeah, it looks like
intense.
we have one question. So with Dispatch, does the tracking of the course happen in SCORM Cloud and in the external LMS? Yes, it does. So the SCORM player, there's a kind of like two layers to this, and I guess it might depend on the learning standard a little bit, but there's a player that's communicating that's embedded in the LMS, or the LMS opened up a new window, but that player is communicating back to the LMS in SCORM 1.2 language and setting completion and setting pass and fail. But that course is still running in SCORM Cloud. So whatever tracking is happening, whether, and it depends in this case for CMI5, it's probably sending some statements. And those are being captured by SCORM Cloud. So you're getting tracking on both ends. Your clients are able to see that they've completed it and passed and failed and all that good stuff. But you're also going to get the reporting in the style of whatever the original e-learning standard is. And Alexander, I didn't mean to skip over your question about what input checking does the public link do for emails? That I don't know. I'm not sure that there's that much input checking or validation.
Just that it's in proper format. I don't think we do any like sending an email to verify that it's a receivable, unfortunately, yet. But.
Yeah, it's pretty loose, I would say, for public invites. Like if they mistype their email, that's okay. And we capture what they put in, but for public invites especially, it's like we're not necessarily going to go create an account for them or add them to our marketing email list or anything. So, you get what they put in. I don't know that there's that much. How granular is the reporting and tracking in SCORM Cloud? Well, it's as granular as the standard you're using allows, really. But we follow the standards. So, like I mentioned for SCORM, you can report on individual interactions, things like that, time spent in particular activities. If you have multi-scope courses, like that's all of that is being captured. Now, you may need to do a little digging to find that. Like I think a lot of the reports that are really easy to get to in SCORM Cloud are just going to give you the high level summary, pass, fail, completion, time spent, and score if that's what's being reported on. But certainly through the API, you can capture all of the fine grained granular details that any e-learning standard could be reporting on. So I've struggled to update courses in SCORM Cloud and ended up only able to upload a new course instead. Not ideal. Is there a webinar that provides help with updating existing courses? I don't know if we have a webinar based on that, but if you're having issues, feel free to reach out to us at support@rustici.com. I'll help you out, or Ryan will, and point you in the right direction. I think on the course details page, there should be a button to add a new version though. Yeah, right there, create a new version. You can browse for the SCORM package that you want to update it with, and then this panel will change. If you do have multiple versions, it will list them all out there. You can also just overwrite if you don't want to create a new version and deal with what happens to people that are in progress. You can always overwrite assets. Maria, when we share SCORM with a dispatch file, we don't see the details of the user, but a standard message like not provided. Ooh, I don't know about that one. No, it's certainly not normal. Yeah, I'm not sure, Maria. I would encourage you to reach out to support. We could dig into that one a little bit.
Yeah.
Sorry about that. But Nick, wanna take us on to? We're gonna get more technical now with how you might do all this stuff with the API. Take it away.
Yeah. You want to start with the basic registration launch links?
Yeah, sure. Uh, wait. Oh, yeah. Sorry, I'm totally on the wrong slide.
So,
Yeah. So registration launch link. So if we're talking about broadly building an API integration, who is this for? We say learning platforms. That's really a broad term. This could be like I think I touched on this earlier, but this is really anybody who, you know, they want to add a SCORM player to their existing platform or portal or blog site. It could be really lightweight, and it can go all the way up to somebody who's building a full scale LMS that they plan to license and sell. Um, so it's as complex as you want it to be, but there's really a broad audience that might be interested in API integration. So we've talked about um, with public invitations and private invitations, kind of the difference of when that registration actually gets created. For dispatch, it's kind of up to the client's LMS when are people launching it, and a registration gets created at that moment. But when you're working with the API, it's really up to you to decide when you create this registration, and obviously you need to register them before you can start launching it. Um, so if you're building an integration, you may have some concept of enrollment, or a learner may have access to your whole library of content. Um, but you may want to hold off on creating the registration in SCORM Cloud. So a learner might sign in and they might have access, or they might be enrolled internally in your system in 50 different courses. Um, but you don't necessarily want to go create all those registrations in SCORM Cloud. And then if the learner ends up only taking 5 out of the 20 courses they have, you're paying for those registrations and they may never get used. So we generally recommend uh, creating that registration right at the time that they go to launch it for the first time. And then if they already have a registration and they come back and want to relaunch it, you can skip that step and you just build a link for that registration that already exists. Creating registrations with the API is pretty easy. It's a very simple post request to the registrations endpoint. Um, you can see this example curl command we have that kind of demonstrates this. In the data, you'll see that there's a course ID, there's a registration ID. These are yours to decide. So when you upload a course, you pick what the course ID is going to be. If you already have IDs internally to your system, you can probably use those. Same thing with registrations. They're yours to decide how you want to format those IDs. Maybe you already have an enrollment ID internally that makes sense to you, and you can certainly reuse that for your registration IDs. And then there's the learner object, and the only thing that's required is a learner ID for an API integration. I think we had a question about this earlier, but you can provide, and we will see it in a second. You can provide more information if you want, if it's going to help you on the reporting side, like including their email and first name, last name. But it's always better to err on the side of keep PII as off our servers. If it's going to be a concern, if you're going to have to come back later and maybe delete PII, and maybe best to just not send us their name in the first place if you don't need it, but certainly helpful in reports. Yeah, and then next part, once you've created a registration and a learner is ready to launch, you're going to create a launch link. And this is another pretty simple curl request. This is also to the registrations endpoint, but you'll see that the path also includes the registration ID. And the only thing that's really required is the redirect on exit URL. And we'll talk a little when we get to custom, all the things you can do to customize launch links. But essentially, this is where the player is going to redirect the learner whenever they exit the course.
all right, let's get to another live demo. We're really testing the waters today. So I'm going to jump into Postman. This is just a tool for making API requests easier. It's an application I can show you all what's going on. we know that before we can create a launch link and launch our content, we will have to create a registration. So that's what we're looking at now. So this is a post request to Cloud's registrations API. And inside our post body, we have our 3 pieces of data that we need to provide. First is the course ID, and I uploaded a course earlier, and I gave it an ID of 1. So I'm going to put a 1 in there. And then the registration ID and the learner ID are really up to you, or up to me to decide what that's going to be. I'm also just going to put these as 1 as well, just to keep things simple. And I'm going to send this off, and hopefully I'll get a 204 back saying that it was created. So at this point, I could go back to Cloud, and there should be a registration there on the course that I just created. But we're going to go ahead and get our launch link built. So this is another post request to our registrations API, and you can see that part of the path is our registration ID, and it needs to be the one that we used in our first request. So I used a registration ID of 1 in our first request. You go to my params tab and then fill in 1 so that it'll go into our path. And then we need to tell the player where it needs to send a learner whenever the course exits. So SCORM Cloud has some templates that are available to you if you don't have a URL that you want to send your learner to. So I'm going to type in message, and that's just a keyword. It's just to put up a generic page whenever the learner finishes. So I'm going to go ahead and make this post request, and hopefully we'll get a launch link back. So there it is. I'm going to open it up. And there we are. Clicked on our link, and we were brought into our content. And then you'll see that when we hit the return to LMS button, we get this page, and that's what we get whenever we type in message for our redirect on exit URL. Yeah, so we're starting to get a little more technical, a little more complex using the API. So Nolan, shall we continue on this path? We'll it's get complex, but like secretly our next topic is just the same thing over again. It's just adding more to it.
Yeah, let's keep it rolling.
I think he actually has a question.
Oh, Kimmy, can you describe a simple real-life example where someone used this? Yeah, well, I mean, people are building, integrations with SCORM Cloud. If they, let's see, see if I can think of an example that's like really simple. But, I work with a customer that has some WordPress sites, for example, for some firehouses and local sheriff departments, and they have compliance training that they need to take. So they just have a really minimal API integration. They can just basically post links to their courses in their WordPress site, and employees can take them there. Let me know if that's a good example. I don't know if that's a good real life example, but yeah, just anytime you have a platform, you have a website or some kind of portal, and you want to add support for e-learning standards, you have some content you want to share. Compliance training is a big one. And we did also have another question that I totally skipped over. I'm so sorry, Joe. Where is suspend data stored? So that is stored along with the registration record. I don't think you're going to be able to access that suspend data unless you're using the API, of course. But I believe that's part of the, yeah. So if you were to call, I'll try to post a link to it in a moment, but the get registrations API method or get registration progress, you should see suspend data somewhere in there. There's some optional flags you can enable to include all of the detail. Like I think just at a minimum, it's just going to give you a high level summary about the course and the learner and Did they complete it? But there's some Boolean flags you can turn on with that method to include, everything that SCORM Cloud recorded, and I believe suspend data is in there.
Also wanted to go back to the previous question about real life examples. There were some questions earlier in the presentation about, can I customize this page before the content's launched, or can I change what information I collect from my learners before launching and send that as part of the registration? So for reporting and things like this, API integration allows you all of that customization. You can build your own page, and then underneath the hood, you make API requests to cloud and generate these launch links. This allows you total control over what you do.
Yeah, and really the goal is to be totally seamless. And I'll touch on that again when we get to the style sheets and stuff. But
all right. Yeah. So as far as adding more data to your registration, you can add some personally identifiable information to your registration, the email address and the first name and the last name. And it's really helpful if you want to export a registration report from SCORM Cloud, so you can know which learner that registration belongs to, because that learner metadata, it lives alongside the learner ID. So you can know who that is without like a lookup table. But like Nolan was saying, like if learner privacy is at the core of your business or the core of your product, you can keep that learner data in your application and just reference it with a learner ID. That's just a benefit of only needing the IT to create the registration. You don't have to provide the name and the email. But if you do, we've seen this already, like in SCORM Cloud, you can see the learner name. And if you export the report, like that'll be available to you as well. Also, as part of the registration creation process, you can provide a postback URL that will tell SCORM Cloud to send data about the registration to your endpoint, this endpoint that you're specifying here, whenever the registration is updated. Like while the user is taking the course, the player is sending updates to SCORM Cloud, and the SCORM Cloud can pass the latest data onto your application. That just allows you to store this up-to-date data without manually fetching it from SCORM Cloud yourself. But it does require your application to have this endpoint set up to accept data from SCORM Cloud. And the next slide here is just going to show you like what kind of data you can expect from SCORM Cloud. It's like it's going to send you a post request, and it's going to look something like this, showing your registration data. And then I want to stop here for a moment and make an important note about registration level configuration. What we're looking at here is the hierarchy in SCORM Cloud. We have the application level as the highest, and then you have the course level underneath that, and then the registration level. The lowest level at which you make a setting is a setting that will be applied. So if you set this postback URL at the registration level, it's going to override those that set at the course and application level. You can see here that all three levels have postback URL set, but the one that the registration is going to be using is the one that's at the registration level. But if you don't add a postback URL at the registration level, but you have one at the course level, the registration will use the one at the course level. And then similarly, in this example, the registration doesn't have a postback URL. The course doesn't have a postback URL. It's only the application that has the postback URL. So the registration postback data will be sent to the URL at the application level. And we encourage people to set it at the highest level that makes sense for them, because if your endpoint changes, you only have to change it at that one place or those couple of places if it's the course level, instead of if you did it at the registration level, you'd have to change all of your registrations to use the new endpoint. I'm going to pass it back to Nolan to double down with an example.
Yeah, so we're really going to hammer it home, and we're running low on time, so I'm going to try to move through this relatively quickly. But just as a quick, example, let's say you have a postback URL configured at the application level to go to foo.com/postback endpoint. And in your application in SCORM Cloud, you have two courses. Course 1 also has a postback URL configured, and 2 registrations with no postback configured. And course 2 doesn't have a postback configured, but one of the registrations is. So, yeah, if you were to launch course or registration 1, because registration doesn't have a postback URL, it's going to take the value from course 1. Registration 2, it's the same deal. It also doesn't have a postback URL. So again, it's going to look up the chain, up the hierarchy, and it's going to use that setting value at course 1. For Reg 3, it does have a registration level configuration, so no need to look up the chain. It's just going to use that, and all of the updates for registration 3 are going to be sent to example.com/postback your endpoint. And finally, for registration 4, there's nothing set on the registration, there's nothing set on the course, so it's going to go ahead and look up the chain and use that application level configuration. And yeah, like Nick said, this is true for any configurations you have in SCORM Cloud. It's not just for postback URLs. If you want courses to launch in a new window or stay embedded in a frame, that would be another one. And so registration level configurations are really useful for playing around with settings, making sure it plays and looks right. And then once you're happy with settings, and there's a whole host of configuration settings in our documentation, once you're happy with it, then you migrate it up the chain and apply it to the application level so that it's broadly just affecting all of your courses. But doing changes or playing around with configurations is better to do it on the registration level, so you're not changing the behavior of all the learners that are launching content currently. Yeah. Oh, sorry. This is totally my slide. Yeah. So registration launch links. So yeah, again, just to add a little more detail, like we showed before, you can include postback URL. When you're creating custom registration, so like Nick mentioned, you can include some more learner information if you'd like. You can also include a postback URL that'll create a registration level configuration, which may or may not be what you want to do, but you certainly can. On the next slide, when you build the launch link, this redirect exit URL is really important. This is where the player is going to send the learner when they exit. If you are embedding content in an iframe, this becomes really important because the redirect on exit URL is how you're going to relinquish control of that cross origin frame. So that frame embedded on your page is actually pointed at cloud.scorm.com. Your parent page is your domain, so the browser is not going to allow you to talk or interact with it, that cross origin frame. So the redirect on exit URL is a way to get this frame back onto your domain, and then wherever you redirect might tell the parent page like, hey, they exited, you're all set to redirect them back to their course library or send them to a results page where you might pull the status or read that postback that just came in and show them, good job, you completed it, you passed, you got 100, or you failed, here's a button to try again. So just very flexible with the API. Yeah, another thing you can pass in on the launch link is custom CSS. So if you're embedding content, most of the time the player is not going to have any UI elements. We want to be as seamless as possible. We don't want your learners coming to our support line. We want it to look like it's just built in natively to your platform. So normally there's not any UI, but in some cases you might have content that doesn't have a dedicated exit button, or you may have multi-scope content that doesn't really have a great way to navigate in between those different activities. So you can, in the package properties editor, you can turn on, show finish button or show navigation, and there's some UI elements that get added. And this is just an example of what it looks like by default with that exit button and the course title and the title bar. of course, we want it to match your theme and brand. So if you want to provide custom style sheets, you can do that. And this is on a you could configure this as an application configuration. You can also pass it in on a launch link if you want to change the style of it depending on maybe the learner's environment. Maybe on mobile, you launch it with a different style sheet than when they're launching in a more normal browser. Launch links also have an expiry. So for security reasons, uh, you know, you should be prepared to create a new launch link and make that request to build registration launch link every single time that the learner is ready to launch back into that content. So no, you cannot just create a registration and then create a perma link for it and store that in your database. Um, when you're building an API integration, we're trusting that you've already authenticated this learner and the learner you're providing this link to is who they say they are. And we want to help and try to prevent that learner from like taking a launch link and sending it to their friend to go take their training for them. So that's why they're very short expiry. And really all this means is like, as soon as you get the link and the learner renders that link, it's going to load a launch page and it's going to quickly redirect into the content. So you don't need a large window. 60 seconds is plenty of time for that to happen most of the time. Another thing you can pass on launch links, and this is a little specific, but courses, maybe you want to pass custom launch data. Maybe the course is smart enough to be able to change dynamically at launch time, depending on what information you're passing in. So you can pass additional values, and these show up as key value pairs, query parameters on the URL of the first piece of content that gets loaded. So if your course is smart enough, let's say you have a course that it can train the learner on 50 different proficiencies, but for this specific learner, you want to focus on these 10. You might pass something in the additional values to tell the course, hey, focus on these areas. And if the course is programmed to do so, it can change dynamically to tailor that experience to the specific learner at launch time. So we have a quick example of this that Nick will show off, but the course that Nick showed earlier, you can actually pass in a storm type. So you could pass a blizzard if you want to train them on blizzard preparedness. On the next slide, you could instead pass hurricane as an additional value for the storm type. And the courses, as Nick will show, it'll dynamically change the content of the course based on that value. So,
yeah. So I think we're ready for our final demo of the day. I know that we are a little past time. I apologize for that. But let's get into it. We go back to Postman. And you know the drill by now. Before we can create a launch link, we have to create a registration. So we go to this request that's been built. It's the same endpoint as before, the same request as before, just some more parameters. And I want to emphasize that there's more you can do than what we have in this demo. These are just the ones that we chose to cover during this webinar today. So I'm going to pass in the email and first name and last name and the postback URL to this registration. I'm going to create it. I did not give it a registration ID. So let me give that a 2. There we go. And then I'm going to build the launch link again. And I need to put my registration ID, which I gave a value of 2 in the previous request, and pass it in there. And then in the body, I'm going to redirect to our products page when we exit. The link is going to expire in 60 seconds. And then I have a CSS file that's hosted on my website, and this launching is the player is going to refer to that CSS file for customization on the player. And then in the additional values, I'm going to pass in a storm type of tornado to my course, and my course knows which type of preparedness it needs to render. So I'm going to send that launch link request, and I have my launch link available to me now. Click it, and it's going to open up in a new tab. And you can see that we have our custom title. We can see that they have different colors. And we also have a tornado course this time instead of, I think we had a hurricane or a blizzard was our default. So you can start and see that also, like, just how the course behaves on the inside. It's relying on those query parameters that were passed to it. And then, like, if I quickly bypass it, like hurricane, and send it again, you can see how easy it is just to change what gets played. I'm sorry. Sync in. Make sure that this launches. I think it's because I still had this open. Due to time, we're just going to keep moving. But this is our products page. So if there's something that you saw here today, if invitations was something new to you and you learned something new, we want to know about that. But it's for, like, public invitations is great for open training. Like, if we want to post training in our webinar today, that'd be great for that, for you all to take it. Private invitations are more targeted. You know your learners in advance, you know their email addresses, and SCORM Cloud will send those invitations to your learners on your behalf. Dispatches are for distributing your content to external LMSs or multiple client systems. And then we have, like, just your basic registration launch links. If you want to do something more custom, build an integration with SCORM Cloud, you can get started with just the bare minimum parameters to build registration launch links. And then as you learn more about SCORM Cloud, or you learn more about what you want your course to behave like, or what you want your integration to behave like, you can start customizing these things to meet your needs and solve your problems. Though SCORM Cloud may not be the right fit for you always, maybe there's features that don't solve your exact problem. We do have other products that might, like Engine. Rustici Engine's very API integration heavy. Or I think Keith asked earlier about Content Controller, the difference between it and SCORM Cloud Dispatch. Like, Content Controller takes the concept of dispatch and then extrapolates that to its own entire product. We also have Generator, uses AI to extract data from your content and help you search through your content and organize it. Yeah, let us know what kind of problems that we can solve for you. We'd love to talk.
Yeah, basically, I think you kind of covered it. But if you have any questions, we're a little over time, because I think we spent more time than I expected answering questions throughout it. But if you have any questions, or there's anything that we missed, if you typed a question and you missed it, sorry about that. But feel free to shoot us a message. Email us at info@rustici.software.com. If you have any issues or you have technical questions, you can send them to support@rustici.software.com. And for SCORM Cloud stuff, myself or my colleague Ryan will help you out pretty quick. Yeah, I think Alicia mentioned it. There's a survey. For me, it's below the chat window at the bottom. But give us some feedback. Let us know how we did. Again, you're going to get a recording of this webinar to the email you registered with later on when that's available. And yeah, thank you for your time. Sorry we went over a little bit, but happens.
Thanks.